Well, fellow golfers, it's been a long time since I did a clip. Unfortunately, in the UK here, at the moment, we've had lockdown for quite some time. Golf courses are closed, golf ranges are closed. Fortunately, I've got a little setup in my small garden of a net and a golf mat, so I'm able to hone in on some key techniques, which is not a bad thing during such a lockdown. But I wish you all a happy and better 2021, and hopefully for more potential golf to come. I thought I'd start off this year with a clip on Dustin Johnson, and given that he has won a number of key tournaments recently, at least before the holiday break, and just go fairly quickly through his swing to highlight a few key parts that we can all learn from. So first, on the setup, you'll see he has his arms in a V shape, fairly straight and firm, like many top golfers. So not too loose like this, really holding the club, trying to get as much potential extension and width as possible. Secondly, you'll see he tilts his shoulder. So in his case to the right, in my case as a lefty, to the left. So his shoulders are tilted. His ball position is in line with his left heel. So you can see that it is forward and in line with the left heel. Finally, worth noting, he takes quite a wide stance. That gives him not only stability, but again, that possibility of a great deal of width as he goes through. He's of course a lot more flexible than some of us. So some of us may need to take a slightly smaller stance and open our stance a bit more in order to get that sort of width. Let's look at the takeaway. He keeps his head still, although he turns it slightly, so his head doesn't bobble up and down, but it turns so that his front eye is still looking at the ball. His weight is clearly on his back foot, and I'll do a couple of interesting drills later on in another clip about how you can get that right based on sort of lift of the front foot and then lift of the back foot as you come through. The third thing to note is that he has a straight takeaway. Somebody else worth looking at in this regard is Justin Thomas, because he practiced before every shot, whether it's an iron or a driver, you'll see him practice that straight takeaway. Not all the way in and not out, but a nice straight takeaway. 3/4 of the way back, you'll see a couple of interesting things. His lead arm, his front arm, remains straight as he goes back. I actually sometimes find that difficult, and I tend to bend it, and therefore you don't get as much width. So something I have to always remember is to try to keep that arm straight. He has a cock of his wrist, a flexion, which gives him already the beginning to set up a really good lag. But the club head is up high, so he extends the club up high. He's beginning to set up that great width to come back. At the top, his lead arm is still very straight. Tough for some of us to achieve because he has the flexibility, the height, and the ability to turn his shoulders and hips much more than probably you and I can. So, but it's something to think about and emulate, perhaps even stop at the 3/4 level if you can't get full back, because if you start bending your elbows too much, you're going to get out of plane. The second thing to note at the top is his full weight is on the back foot. Now let's look at it as he comes down. His lead arm remains straight, so he's getting that full width, full length in his case, long arms also, which will give him the club head speed that he obviously aspires to and is able to achieve. And two other things, his weight has already shifted, so before he begins to come down, he shifts his weight, not dramatically, but shifts his weight onto his front foot, recenters himself, and he has still a very large lag. So those combinations is going to give him a tremendous downward width and potential speed. At impact, a couple of things important to note. His arms are quite straight at impact, so he's using that full arc that he's coming through. His weight is completely on his front foot, his back foot heel is lifted, but he has the tilt away from the ball, so that allows him to create that extension through, even though his weight is at the front foot. So the combination of the front foot weight, the tilt, and the straight arm at impact gives him the fullest possible speed and extension as he comes through. Now let's look at how he comes through. He does not look at the ball after he's hit the impact position. He doesn't tend to raise his head and look at the ball. He just, even almost 90 degrees out, he's still looking down. His head may turn slightly, obviously, as his body comes through, but he achieves that maximum compression as he comes through to allow him to have a very solid strike. One of the mistakes a lot of us make as amateurs is we're trying to quickly see the ball. We often then misalign ourselves as a result, almost at the impact point. But the impact in the first part of the extension and transition, you need to be absolutely straight through. So that straight line impact that I've shown in some of the tips of my earlier clips, you will notice that his back heel lifts and his front foot flares, and that's because he's really driving through onto his front weight, but he's allowing, by opening his front foot slightly and flaring it, he's allowing his hips to completely open, not for the club to come around. The club stays behind and through as he comes through, but it allows him, as he comes through in that extension, to remain straight with his arms, but his hips open even more, and that gives him even more power. So clearing your hips, but not misaligning yourself with your arms in the club to make your arms and club follow where the hips are going. Otherwise, you're going to pull it and hooking. I make that mistake several times. So I have to remind myself of that sequencing. In the finish, you'll see that he's got a really nice upright finish. He's very upright and straight. His belly is facing the target, and his eyes are facing the target. So the end of that extension, yes, your head then follows through, and you are looking at the target, and you are facing the target in all of your dimensions. So really interesting key takeaway points from Dustin Johnson. Most of us will not be able to perfect necessarily all of that, but there are things to keep in mind and emulate, and maybe try a bit at a time. My advice is try just the takeaway. Try the three-quarter position. Try coming down to impact where your shoulders are back down in line, and just practice that a few times, even without hitting balls, and then perhaps hit a few short shots with it. So don't try to always do full shots. Get your body position, your muscle memory to begin to learn those movements, and then you can begin to take fuller shots later. I hope these few elements of the great Dustin Johnson swing is a good way to start 2021. Happy golfing, my friends. See you on the flip side.